Ori
Yeah, blast me. You can take an African out of Africa, but you can't take Africa out of African.
Abodoboye, everybody. I am Baba Makanjuola of Ori, or you can say powerofori.com. And I want to welcome everybody to the Power of Ori Podcast with yours truly. We are going to talk a lot, not a little bit, but a lot about Ori throughout this series. And I'm going to do this with the help of some very respected Iyas and Babas in this tradition that we call Ifa. I want to help bring the information of Ori to the forefront and make it a part of everyone's conversation on a regular basis, because I truly believe that Ori needs to be at the forefront of all of this. And we will discuss a little bit more why as we go along with this series. But today, we're going to have a conversation with our sister here, Chief Ifaremi, out of Baltimore, Maryland. And she's here to share some information with your Baba about character. Character is a conversation that everybody has. Everybody talks about Iwapwele and all these things. My question is, how does your Ori play part in that to help you achieve good character?
Well, that's a good question. And first, I already told you privately, but I want to say it publicly. I want to commend you and applaud you for being I like to say, African born in America that happens to be a male that is in the path of Ifa, for creating this platform, for having the creative ingenuity and mind set to bring to light the importance of Ori. And I went over your website. It's beautiful. It's amazing, the work that you're doing, the direction that you're going with it. I love it. And I'm happy and thankful to be here on this podcast, because the work that you're doing is truly in alignment with what I preach all the time. So I just wanted to take a moment to commend you and thank you for having me here, and thank you for the work that you're doing, brother.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I do. I appreciate that. Flowers are always good.
Yes. Ori, as it relates to character.
Wait. Before you start, I want you to do this. Explain to the people who you are. Give them your backdrop. Give us some more insight on who you are.
Okay. So I am Chief Ifaremi Olosun. I am Iya Oshun of Asafori Tifa Temple, Oshugbo land. I am head priestess at my own Ile Ewuji. I am a priestess of and initiated into Ifa, Obatella, Egbe, and Oshun. I have to count. Make sure I'm not forgetting any.
Yeah.
I've been in the path of Ifa and Orisa, I would say consciously, for about 11 to 12 years. I've been traveling to and from Nigeria, in particularly Osun State, Oshugbo, since 2013, studying Ifa, studying the Orisa. And it put me in a great position, because I was able to do a lot of compare and contrast to the culture and the people there and the culture and the people here. So let me say that I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I always like to point out that it was, in fact, my Ori that brought me to the path of Ifa. I have nobody in my family, wasn't born in it. All of my family members are Christians, or I think we have like 1 or 2 Muslims in the family. But it was just my Ori and my higher self, and the part of my consciousness that knew what was for me, that led me to the path of Ifa. So that's a little background of, who I am, what I do, my take as it relates to how I work in the path of Ifa. I always say there's no spiritual work without inner work, which is why I say what you're doing really aligns with what I do. I like to base my teachings off of the way things are done in the source land, traditional Ifa. But I also like to take those teachings and have my clients and people that I work with internalize those teachings and have the tools to be able to apply it to their day-to-day life, So I'm sure we're going to dig into that a little more later, what I mean by that. Because you touched on it a little bit. There's a lot of people that glorify and externalize the Orisa. And they glorify and externalize the Odu Ifa. And they kind of personify the Orisa into being almost human being-like. And they like, all of the things that are associated with the Orisa, the powers and the colors and the exterior stuff. So I'm really big on teaching the metaphysics. So taking the traditional concepts, the indigenous way, the way things are done in Yoruba land. And I call myself the bridge or the middleman. And I in turn interpret that and bring it over here to people in the diaspora who can take those concepts and develop tools to be able to apply them in their day-to-day life. So to internalize it and to know what these Orisa mean for them personally, metaphysically speaking.
This is going to be interesting. This is going to be interesting. Okay. Thank you, Ia. My question, I want to ask you real quick. How did your family receive your shift?
Well, I will say my family did not receive it initially. Keeping in mind, this was back in, I think, like 2010 or so. When my Ori first guided me to the path, it started off with me just reading different books. It was really an act of desperation to save my life because I felt like I was living, but I wasn't alive.
Yeah.
And so I just started going to my local library and just pulling out any book I could find about other types of so-called religions. So once I started educating myself on the different, spiritual paths, if you will, it went from that to meditating, then from meditating to receiving different revelations, then from receiving these revelations to I started studying Reiki. So my family saw the stages of my transformation. So once I started working more with energy, meditating more, having these dreams and visions, I became more knowledgeable of self. So my clothes, the way I dressed started changing, the way I spoke started changing. Events that I would and would not attend started changing. And so my family started looking at me the way they always looked at me, because I always was different. But even more so, then they started looking at me like, what's wrong with her? She crazy. Something up with her. What's going on? So then when I got initiated, my mother, different family members, my mother really, they have no idea anything about any African traditions or cultures or spiritual systems. So I got called, crazy. I was told that I was going to burn in hell. I was asked, am I a witch? Am I doing voodoo? Why are you doing that? You're not African. You're American.
Mm-hmm.
You look like you just got like you fresh off the boat wearing African clothes. And I mean, they put me through it. They did not receive it well.
Wow.
Initially. And don't get me started on the shrines. If I would have something at my house and they come over and see the shrines.
Like with a fresh elbow on it?
Yes, with all friends and the elbow, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, it almost blew their wig back, as we say in Baltimore. But they were really taken aback by it. I remember them saying, you know, how can spirit is a spirit. Spirit can't receive food, or you giving that for the ancestors. Our ancestors wasn't into no E5. So just all types of scrutiny. But going back to Ori, you know, it was my Ori and my inner spirit that no matter what they said to me,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how they scrutinized me, no matter how bad they talked about me, it was just a feeling of I am in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, I found something that feels good. It makes me feel alive. This is right for me. Mm-hmm. So I was able to stay strong and not pay that any mind.
I had to ask that because I have a lot of conversations with a few Babalaos in Nigeria, and they tend not to understand what we risk coming into this. Like, we definitely are saying that we're willing to leave behind a life that we grew up under, because like you said, majority of us didn't grow up in this. So we get it as adults. And by the time we get it as adults, we have whole families that live a completely different life. So we got to be willing to either sometime lose friends and family. You got to go through the scrutiny that you've gone through. And you got to spend a whole lot of money to get this stuff. Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you got to rearrange your whole entire life around it. So I wanted that to be said or be known, because I want to try to bridge a gap at the same time with this podcast between us and them, so they can understand what it is we're dealing with technically. Why are we coming back to this? Why are we choosing? Why is our re-choosing this in 2023? We haven't had a chance to for 200 plus years, but now why are we doing it now? So it's a lot of risk. It's a lot of things on the table for it that we can possibly, technically, I'll say lose, but not lose, or risk by doing this. And we're not doing it because we just want to wear dashikis and beads. We're doing it because we want to change our lives and change the trajectory of our family.
Absolutely. If I may add to that, I would also add that when you said why are many of us doing this? Mm-hmm. First, let me say that there is a misconception about the Orisa and what the Orisa are and who the Orisa are for. That's why I always repeat it again and again, to the point where I sound redundant when I say the Orisa are the primordial energies of the universe. Mm-hmm. So the Orisa, while it is the Yoruba people and the Yoruba tribe who have preserved and cultivated the path of the Orisa and the Orisa knowledge and the Odu Ifa and the ceremonies and the rituals and so forth, the Orisa is for all melanated people, is for all indigenous people of the land, no matter where you live. So let me be, clear about that. The next thing that I want to say is, when you touched on the why, and I'm going to try to put it in simplified terms without going too deep. But when we are on our spiritual journey, there are some things that comes to our awareness. One of the things that came to my awareness personally is that we've had past lives and past experiences. Mm-hmm. And our Ori knows what path we need in this life in order to activate our higher self, in order to activate our consciousness, in order to elevate. Mm-hmm. So for some of us, that may be Ifa, that may be the Orisa path. For others, they may have to go to IET and, you know, take the path of voodoo. For others, it could be the Akan tradition. But it is the subconscious mind, the Ori, that knows what we need and where we need to go to have certain rituals and rites performed to reawaken and to reactivate our genetic memory and our DNA, our power, and our higher self. So it just, for those of us born here in the diaspora, through our journey, we came to realize that, you know, even though we're born here, the paths and the traditions that most people follow here, Christianity, Muslim, and all of the religions, happen to not be what our Ori needed in order to elevate, to reactivate, to reawaken, to reignite, or to connect to our higher selves. So once we came to that realization that this is the thing that makes us feel good, like we're in alignment, like we're doing what we were brought here to do. Like you said, myself, we jump hurdles. We definitely jump a lot of hurdles to do what we know in our heart, mind, and spirits, you know, what we're placed here to do, which is to be Orisa. Yes, we spend a lot of money. We take a lot of backlash for it. We got to deal with the cultural differences, you know, because we're coming from here to there. Also, it's just a lot. It's a lot. A lot of people have to deal with scamming, misinformation, being taken advantage of, what's the phrase? Just being, they make you run all around the Mary Bush sometimes just to get a small piece of information.
Exactly.
They don't want to share the information because they believe it's only for them. So as I said, it's for everybody, all indigenous people, all melanated people. It's who the Orisa are for. It's the universe, the energies of the universe and of the earth.
I feel tempted. Let me see. I feel tempted. Let me see. Before we get into the meat of this, you just said something that's interesting. You said it's for everybody melanated, right?
Yes.
Now, Batala is the person who's responsible for the mold of human beings, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Does that include non-melanated people to you?
I go on the record quite often saying that me personally, to each his or her own. I don't judge anybody else's choices, but I have facilitated many initiations and tours, and I work with clients all around the world. But I let it be known I do not work with anyone who is not does not have African descent. Rather, you know, there are different terms where people refer to them as Caucasian or Asiatic or white or what have you. I work primarily with people of African descent. Solely. Not primarily, solely.
Solely.
And there's a multitude of reasons for that. The practice itself is of African descent.
Exactly.
So, you know, that's self-explanatory. So, you know, when we talk about Orisa veneration, Orisa worship, a lot of people don't know the Orisa are also ancestors, which that's a whole nother topic. But in Yoruba land, they have Egungun festivals for Oshun. They have Egungun festivals for Ogun and Shango and so on. So each Orisa also have their own Egungun. So, and then in addition to that, there's, you know, the part of Egungun, ancestral veneration. So in my personal experience, those ancestors show up, you know, those ancestors show up. So imagine if we're holding space with people who are not of African descent, with, you know, different experiences than our own. It creates a situation of conflicting energies and spirits in a space, and it's just not good. It's just not a good look when that happens, you know.
I totally understand. I mean, I had to ask because I've been told different things. And of course, with the understanding that Obatala made the mold, that means anything that came from that mold um, came from that creation of Obatala. So that's interesting. But I totally understand it, and I totally get it. I'm not in the position because I don't have godchildren and Elay. I don't. That's just not my bag, right? But if people are doing that work, I've been in circles where I've seen them in there. I'm like, why are they here? Like, I don't understand. Like, why are they here? Like, don't they got a church to go to? Like, why are they here? But I never could understand how that happens. Like, we need this. Our spirits here in America are waking up, coming back to something that was taken from us, just to aid them to come in with us. That makes no sense to me. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, in my mission, people say, what do you do? I help melanated people realign with their purpose and power. That's my tagline. That's my mission statement. So that would go against my whole purpose for being. That's what I've come to know. That's my reason for coming back to the planet, which is to help people of African descent, or sometimes I'll say melanated people, because we were everywhere. We were all over the planet, as the indigenous people of the planet. So that may be Africa or maybe somewhere else, but nevertheless, that's my mission, to help everybody reclaim their power and reconnect to their purpose. So that would go against everything that I do. That's not what I'm here for, to serve those particular people, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Thank you for answering.
But there are a lot of people. There are a lot of Babalawos, a lot of leaders, and there are verses that they'll quote to say that it's for everybody, that, non-indigenous people can participate. I've gotten to those debates before. I've been in this, had some skin in the game for a while. But what I come to realize is everybody's perception will be based on their experience. And a lot of people in Yoruba land, they're not taught in their schools about racism. They're not taught about history throughout the diaspora. They're not aware of a lot of historical facts that would possibly give them a different perspective on why that should not be. So that's why a lot of them support it. They say, we don't see color and we don't know nothing about that. And, just get over it. That was years ago. And, so when you can't relate, you have when your perception is different based on your experience. So I just, decided to step out of that argument and just do what works for me.
See, again, if we bridge the gap, we can let these people know we have a 243, something like that, years of a head start of knowing how these people are physically every day under their rule for 200 plus years. Listen to the lady, y'all. Listen to Ia. Anyway, let's dive in. Character. We're talking about character today. The power of character. This is a subject matter that's tossed around Ifa a lot. Everybody's talking about character, right? Iwa Pwele, they call it. My question to you is, first things we got to do is we got to lay the foundation of this, including the unit of measurement, right? Do me a favor, from your background, from your understanding, from your studies, do me a favor, define what good character is. Give a definition to what that is. And your unit of measurement too at the same time.
Boomerang theory, you want love, then give love. Live your life, don't let them kill your bugs. Like pest inspectors, extract the nectar from wax situations, ancestors, texture. Bringing it went through so you can see through the pain, pushing you on to destiny lane. Life is an experience, ain't no need in fearing it. Here's an experiment, go have a collision with fear. Doubt, insecurity, ambiguity, dip spirit in detergent. Watch your purpose surface, confidence soar. Sleeping giants roar, new roads get explored. me.